I made the Savannah Party Animals in MLB The Show, and today I have to win them a World Series in 5 seasons. And while this might not sound difficult at all, I promise there's a big twist, because as an expansion team, we are starting with a terrible roster, and on top of that, every season I have to spin the wheel of rebuild rules. This will give us a handicap every season, and to start off, we can only sign 2 free agents. For season 1, that's easily one of the worst handicaps we could have gotten, because even though we can still make trades, we really have nothing to sell. It is no surprise that on opening day, we're losing 9-0 to the Pirates, but on the bright side, at least our jerseys look pretty cool. And I also think the stadium I found on the vault is very fitting for a weird team, as we are not getting shut out. Our 64 overall second baseman just went yard, and that is honestly very encouraging, because only being allowed to sign 2 free agents means many of these guys are gonna stay on the team next year. We just scored our 3rd run, and now Andujar is gonna keep this one fair down the 3rd base line to score number 4, so at least opening day ended on a good note. But of course, we're by far the worst team in Major League Baseball, so this first season is entirely about the draft. Because we took over the Marlins, we're picking at number 16, which means pretty much all of these early players are not going to be options, but it does look like we should be able to get our hands on a quality position player. After our first month, we're somehow better than the New York Mets, and of course that makes no sense because our highest overall player is only 68 overall, but it's definitely good seeing guys play above their ratings because they could become trade bait. For now though, I'm going to play out the toilet bowl because I really need to see if the New York Mets are even worse than an expansion team, because honestly, that would kind of be on brand. My friend, not the expert, is a Mets fan, so they've kind of become my favorite National League team, which obviously has been a struggle this year. But out of all their embarrassment, getting beat by the Party Animals would officially be rock bottom, and you've got to be kidding me. That home run just made it a 4-0 game, and now with only 1 out in the 2nd inning, they're looking to add even more. The bases are loaded for Miguel Andujar, who slaps this up the middle. That is going to score 2 more runs. And before the accusations start coming in, I do want to clarify that I am playing on Hall of Fame. Sean Manaea didn't even make it 2 innings, but it doesn't look like Luis Severino's gonna do much better as he's already allowed a run, so my plan to get the number 1 pick is hilariously backfiring because the Party Animals cannot stop scoring as they defeated their division rival. Even if their success does not continue, this is kind of funny, especially because this is the worst pitching rotation I've ever seen. Luckily for us though, it looks like there's a ton of options for us to solve that problem, but I want to make sure that whoever we draft can actually make it to the majors in 5 seasons, so maybe that could be a high floor player like Diego Santos from Canada. Someone like Felipe Pacheco is definitely going to have high potential, but his low overall makes him a huge project. And obviously, with our free agency restriction, we need someone who can help us out right now. The same thing goes for position players, as I would normally stay away from a 23-year-old, but Steven Sasaki could help us out right now. After another month, we're the worst team in baseball, so that means that in this first draft, we're basically relying on anyone we select to play immediately at the major league level, and my top target is Fabio Novoa. We know that he's at least going to have a high floor coming in, but if we're unable to get him, then Kevin Allen and Ray Kraft could both be good options. Then in the 2nd round, I'd really like to get catcher Edgar Gonzalez, but I'll also settle for a guy like Steven Sasaki or even Alexi Castillo. This is going to be a very pitcher-heavy draft, as there were 9 pitchers selected and 9 picks before Fabio Novoa went off the board at number 13. That is still very unfortunate, but at least Kevin Allen is still here, and I feel like he could have good upside. Then my biggest fear came true in round 2, as Edgar Gonzalez and my other 2 options are off the board, so I've suddenly run out of scouted position player options, which is gonna leave Bernardo Alvarez as my best option. He has good contact and athleticism, so maybe he turns into a good player, and thankfully our next selection was not long after that, but as you can see, there are not a lot of good options available, so we could be taking a 3rd outfielder in a row, which is honestly fine with me because contact is the most important sim stat, and Brent Fagan has a lot of it. All of my discovery pitchers are still on the board, so for now, I'm going to take another shot in the dark on a position player, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to select Dominic Mays. More than likely, he's going to have low 70s potential with decent contact and power, but that's still better than anyone we have on roster, and Rafael Matos is still here in the 4th round, and he's kind of a similar situation, but we do need a 3rd baseman. Even in a very weird draft, I'm staying true to my strategy of waiting until the end to take pitchers, but now I'm taking Diego Santos, who's easily the best one on the board. Now in round 6, I'm very happy to see all 4 of my guys are still there, so we're closing things out with Ruben Manuel. That was easily one of the worst drafts I've ever done, but because we're ranked last in pretty much every category, we need reinforcements as soon as possible, even if they're not going to do much to improve easily the worst farm system in all of baseball. Our only all-star this season was Carson Kelly, who only got in because we're required to have an all-star, and just from looking at the stats, he's not even our best player. Garcia's on pace for 80 RBIs, so he's our most sellable player, and I think I found a good trade partner in the Seattle Mariners who definitely need a right fielder, and all I'm asking for in return is Ryan Weathers. However, I definitely can't stop there because free agency is gonna be brutal, so I'm adding another bullpen arm in Tyler Holton because getting our hands on as many decent pitchers as possible is the best way to rebuild this team. Speaking of rebuilding this team though, we finally have a chance to view our first draft, which is obviously going to be very important for next year's success and beyond, and at least that's a lot of green. Obviously, we didn't get any 90 potentials, and that really was not what we were going for here, because if we did draft someone like, say, Michael King, who has 98 potential, he's such a low overall, he would not be at the majors in 5 seasons. Very similar to the first draft of my Portland Pickles franchise, we targeted a ton of high floor players who can help us out right now, but we still got a couple guys with 80 potential like Kevin Allen, Bernardo Alvarez, and Diego Santos, while guys like Brent Fagan and Rafael Matos are coming in straight away with high overall. Dominic Mays also comes in at 69 overall, while Diego Santos and Ruben Manuel could join our rotation right away. That should help out a team that only won 1 game in August and finished the year with a devastating 29-133 record. Then to make things worse, we can only sign 2 guys to help improve our team, so I'm definitely gonna go big, making a huge offer for Corbin Burns, and then with our final signing, we're addressing the offense with Danny Jansen. I'm already feeling better about this team, but now I need the draft lottery to not screw us out of the #1 pick, which is exactly what's gonna happen. We're at number 2. At least our roster is looking a lot better entering season 2 with Burns, Jansen, and then a couple Rule 5 guys, but even then, we're still considered the worst team in baseball, which is no surprise because we have 4 new draft picks batting in the first 5 spots of our lineup. Now because it's the new year, we have to spin the wheel for our handicap, and that is not good because a team that already doesn't have a lot of good players needs to get rid of one of their top 5 best, and I think I'm gonna choose Tyler Holton. Losing a reliever is definitely not the worst case scenario, even though the prospect we got back is not very good. On the bright side, that's our only handicap of the season, and now it's time for Corbin Burns' debut on opening day, but we're also getting our first look at several new rookies. Fagan hit the ball hard, but straight to third base as Alvarez does the same, but an error gets him to second, so now there's a runner in scoring position for Rafael Matos, but maybe not for long as Alvarez tried to steal and failed. We missed an opportunity, but Burns is holding it down, and here's the first at bat for our other big signing, Danny Jansen, who goes Oppo Taco for the first run of the year. He made his impact for the Party Animals the first chance he got, so hopefully the rest of our offense can rally around him, and it looks like that's what's gonna happen as waiver wire Enrique Hernandez follows up. That gives us 2 dingers against the flame-throwing Hunter Green, and the only unfortunate thing about that is our new draft picks have not done anything yet, but that might change as Alvarez gives this one a ride into the gap where it's gonna drop for a ground rule double. Alvarez was our lowest overall draft pick, but his contact skills definitely make up for that, and we're starting him over our first round pick, Kevin Allen. Now Matos has another scoring chance, which Green takes away from him, which is definitely disappointing, but Corbin Burns is locked in as a runner's taking off, and Danny Jansen continues his excellent day. That is exactly why you should invest in a good catcher, as he made good contact once again into the right center gap, being chased down deep to the track, but it stays in the yard. If he blasted another dinger in his debut, I think I would have made him a statue, because it really feels like him and Corbin Burns are the only reason we're winning this game. But remember that we just traded our best reliever, so I'm a little concerned about what's gonna happen when Burns gets out of the game and he just gave up his first home run. I really just need him to survive the rest of this inning, but Indy is going the other way, driving this deep, and that one is gone for back-to-back home runs. The Reds have tied this game in just 2 swings, so he needs some offense, except Alvarez is stopped in the middle of the base paths. He is frozen and has no idea where he is, looking like Joe Biden. Auto base running is on, so I have no idea what just happened. So once again, we need Danny Jansen to be a hero, except he pops it up. Thankfully though, Corbin makes it another inning, so we are still tied up going into the 7th inning stretch, where Cincinnati has finally pulled Hunter Green, but of course, we immediately ground into a double play. Now I'm begging for our bullpen to hold, but that is not gonna happen. So Cincinnati has put up 3 unanswered runs, so we need an answer on offense as David Fletcher is gonna get aboard. So this would be a prime time for Brent Fagan to get his first career hit, but it's not gonna happen, which means we once again need Bernardo Alvarez to come up big, but of course he's gonna fly out deep to left field. It is very clear that losing Tyler Holton has had a huge impact on our team because they gave up 2 runs that lost us another opening day. Obviously though, our bullpen is not the only thing to blame because 3 of our 4 rookies did not get hits. However, we bounced back in our next game, and it's very encouraging to see 11 hits. However, we're off to another slow start, but at least we're getting our first look at this draft class where we have the number 2 overall pick, except I'm really not seeing any generational players. Maybe we can turn our season around with an extra inning win against the Tigers. However, they just scored the go-ahead run, so just like we saw versus Cincinnati, our bullpen has blown it. By the way, now back with the Tigers, Tyler Holton is having a great season, while literally all of our relievers have been complete garbage. Losing our most reliable option in the bullpen has definitely hurt, but now in our very next game, we have a redemption chance, except our center fielder has no idea where he is. That is the weirdest glitch I've ever seen. This video has just started, but we've already seen so much chaos. But to be fair, maybe that's what happens when you put a team like the Party Animals at the MLB level, as 2 pass balls in a row are gonna tie it back up. This has been one of the weirdest innings of baseball I've ever seen, but maybe we can get the walk-off win, as Matos legged out an infield single, but now there are 2 outs for Alvarez, who hits it straight to third. That's very unfortunate, but our bullpen extends the game, so the winning run's at second base, as this is driven into right field, where it's not fielded cleanly. That is gonna be a walk-off for the Party Animals. It certainly wasn't pretty, but shout out to Chris Bubic for going 6 innings, only allowing 2 hits and 1 run, and even though we're just a couple weeks into the season, it really looks like our offense has taken a step forward. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of good position player talent at the top of the draft, so there's a very good chance I take a pitcher or Brian Villanueva, even though I already drafted 3 outfielders last year. Having a logjam of young players is definitely a very good problem to have, because we can always trade our prospects for players at positions of need, so no matter what, my goal is to bring the most talented players onto the Party Animals, as we're up by 1 against the Yankees, and Fletcher's going to add another run with a sac fly. That gives us a 2-run lead, and we were very lucky that throw was offline, because it was not a deep fly out. However, as we've gotten used to, our bullpen is going to blow this lead, so it's very clear that we need to revamp our bullpen if we even want a chance moving forward. This would be the perfect time for our young lineup to come up big, as Matos is going the other way into right field, back to the track where it is caught. Even though he hasn't made much of an impact on screen, he is definitely having a decent rookie year, and honestly, it's the same story for Dominic Mays, Bernardo Alvarez, and Brett Fagan. All I want is for those players to develop, and how about this? Danny Jansen just went yard into left field to give us the lead right back. Jansen is only hitting 200, but honestly, that is okay, because every time his stick makes contact, he is going balls deep, and that was almost another one. By the way, if you are enjoying this rebuild and want to see more similar videos, the best way you can support me is by dropping a like, but also my YouTube analytics told me over 90% of you guys are not subscribed, so let's also fix that. With a man on second in the 9th, I would love to extend our lead, but unfortunately our first round pick grounds out, and then of course we are facing Aaron Judge. In real life, he's probably gonna win the AL MVP, and now he could be the tying run in this game, but thankfully with a full count, he grounds out. Giancarlo Stanton could be the last out of this game, but we left a slider right over the middle, but with Anthony Rizzo at the plate, I am not worried, as he flies out deep into right field, and the Party Animals survive. On the bright side, we are not in last place in our division, and we are already well on pace to beat last year's win total. Brian Villanueva, who we just scouted last week, could be my first selection, but of course I'm gonna keep looking for a guy with maybe some more offensive upside. Last year, I called our matchup against the New York Mets the Toilet Bowl, and at least up to this point in the season, that is still the case, but Fagan just tied it up with a solo shot. What an answer from our rookie leadoff hitter. But with Danny Jansen at the plate, this rally might not be over. This is smoked into center field, but it's run down. For a second, it looked like that could drop in for an RBI double, but instead, the Mets are going to take the lead right back. So even though the Party Animals have a lot of fun out there, they never seem to rally when you need them to. But there is a man on first for Kevin Allen, who grounded out just like he did last game. We have given our first ever draft pick a chance to hit against lefties, but even then, he's doing terribly. So even though he has a higher ceiling than our other rookies, I really think we need to send him to AAA. Not all hope is lost though, especially as 2 rookies are now on base. And Danny Jansen is exactly who I want in this situation, and are you kidding me? That is a deep drive to left field, and if you blinked you missed it, Danny Jansen has walked it off against Edwin Diaz. That is a signature win in the Toilet Bowl, as Danny Boy continues to be the clutchest player on the team. That was a crazy way to win a game, but I also have to point out Rafael Matos hit 2 bombs, so our offense is really heating up, as they're in 23rd for batting average, while also ranking 22nd for runs. We're in a scoreless game against one of the worst teams in baseball, except David Fletcher is gonna change that with 1 swing, so at least our bad luck in late games is turning itself around, but clearly I spoke too soon because we just gave up 3 runs. It is very obvious that the moves I made last season to acquire more bullpen talent have not worked out in our favor, but of course it makes sense because at that time we had absolutely nothing to trade, and at least we're gonna get a run back on the board. That should at least help us out in the 9th inning, but of course I jinxed it again, so right after a signature win, we have crashed back down to earth, so I'm making this trade with the White Sox for 2 bullpen arms. At least at the beginning of July, we're above 30 wins, and our offense is definitely the biggest reason for that, as we have 6 guys over 700 OPS, including our 3rd round round rookie Dominic Mays, who has a 939 and is drastically improving. He is currently in second place for National League Rookie of the Year, and I wish I could say there was a similar success story in our pitching rotation, but aside from Corbin Burns, there's pretty much nothing. I'm very glad we have the second pick in the draft, but of course my favorite prospect went off the board, so now we're definitely in a bit of a weird spot because I planned my entire draft around taking Villanueva, but we definitely need another solid pitcher, and Fletcher Smoove is the best player on my board, so I'm going to trust the scouts and pick him at number 2. We do have a competitive balance pick, and I would love to add a closer because we really don't have a pure one on the roster, and even though my favorite 2 options did go off the board, at least John Doughty's still here, who has a very good potential range and should be able to help us out right away. I'm glad I pulled the trigger because Mark Willis went a pick later, and now in round number 2, Donald Stone is the top player on my board and does look very intriguing, but because we already have a pretty good first baseman, I'm going to double up at starting pitcher, taking Kevin Munson. It's only round 3 and we're already running out of options, so I'm going to go with the player I've already scouted who's guaranteed to have good contact, and Gilberto Estrella. Now in round 4, I'm trying to decide between 2 players we already have pretty solid starters at, but I'm going to go with Gallegos because infield is a slightly bigger need. Either one of those guys would have been a shot in the dark, and now in round 5, you can see that there are plenty of discovery guys still on the board, including Enrique Veras, who our scouts have ranked as the number 9 prospect in the entire draft, so that was a very easy decision, and we're going to close things out with Joe Katimer. I am very excited to see those ratings because we've already seen how our first draft has changed our team, as we're on pace for 70 wins, and we're doing that with 4 rookies in our lineup. This year we actually had 2 All-Stars, one of which was the reliever we traded for, along with Danny Jansen, so we've already made so much progress and can further prove that with a win against the other Atlanta team. Rafael Matos just tied the game, so this game's set up for a very exciting ending, but we desperately need our all-star closer to hold strong against their lineup, which is gonna happen. Now they have Iglesias in, trying to hold us, and there's good contact into right center field, but it's not good enough, so it is all up to Fagan to get on base as he makes contact to right field where it's tracked down. To tell you guys the truth, I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name, but if I did, I would definitely give him a shout out for being lights out today, because our pen has been much better ever since acquiring him. Here's Rafael Matos in extra innings, who already has 3 hits, but make it number 4, which is gonna score Fagan from second base. Not long ago, it seemed that Dominic Mays was our best rookie by far, but Rafael Matos is showing that it's gonna be a much closer contest, as we're in position to close out one of baseball's best teams, and even though Acuna didn't go yard, it's gonna advance the runner. We have to be very careful facing Matt Olson, because he could end the game in one swing, but there's a strikeout, so Ozzy Albies could be the final out as he makes soft contact deep into right center field, drifting back. We're just certainly gonna stay in the yard as the Savannah Party Animals won their biggest game yet. The easy player of the game goes to Rafael Matos, who had 4 hits and 3 RBIs, and if he continues this hot streak, he could win National League Rookie of the Year. Approaching the trade deadline, we're definitely not looking to buy, but there's one player that I cannot pass up, and it's Vaughn Grissom, because we definitely need a solid second baseman, because our current starter is definitely not cutting it and hits free agency after this year. Because second base is such a big need, I'm willing to part with Ruben Manuel, who we just drafted this past season, and I feel like that's a pretty good package for a player the Red Sox are desperately trying to get rid of. Also, because our bullpen is pretty bad, I'm going to Tyler Holton's team, the Tigers, to make a move for Trevor Rogers. With the deadline out of the way, it's finally time to see our draft picks, and I'm very curious how we did, as that's a lot more blue than last year. Obviously, last year's strategy was a bit different because we could only sign 2 free agents, but I definitely think this draft class as a whole was a lot deeper. I'm definitely glad we got Fletcher Smoove after missing out on our top option, but I am very curious how good Villanueva ended up being, and that is honestly a bit of a shocker. He is not better than any of the outfielders we took last season, so in my mind, he's definitely a bit of a bust, and I'm glad we ended up with a better option. The moral of the story here is to always trust our scouts, as we ended up with all 18-year-olds except for closer John Doughty, and even though Kevin Munson's a little disappointing, at least he ended up with B potential, and where we missed with him, we more than made up for it with Gilberto Estrella, who's coming in with great contact skills and very high potential. Then there's Fernando Gallegos, who's basically just a clone of Rafael Matos, and I really only picked him because I had no other position options, beside of course the other player I was debating taking in Johnny Doe, and it literally would not have made a single difference. However, as always, the best values of the draft came from our discovery pitchers, as our first one, Enrique Veras, already has 64 overall. Then we somehow got even better than that, taking Joe Katimer, who has 98 potential. There's honestly not much else for Savannah to do this season, but we're playing one more game against the Mets, and and I'm very glad we are because Kevin Allen just went yard. The first round pick was called back up for September, and in just one swing, he erased a 2-run deficit in the toilet bowl. We already have one walk-off against the Mets, and now we're looking for another one as Andujar's gonna gap this into left center field for a double. So the winning run is on second base with just one out as Fletcher goes the other way, but it's gonna be caught, which means the rookie Matos is our last chance. We need him to deliver if we want to avoid extras, and at least he walks, which is gonna bring up the king of clutch, Danny Jansen. Of course, he's the one who walked it off last time, so it's no surprise they're pitching around him as he looks at strike 3. They kept every single pitch low, so that's definitely a surprise, and we just gave up 2 runs. And honestly, after stranding that runner with 0 outs, I think we deserve to lose. As Edwin Diaz is trying to end our day, but Von Grissom might not be having it, turning on this one into left field where it's gonna go foul. That was just inches away from being a double, but now Francisco Lindor is gonna make the play of his life, throwing off balance across the field to get the final out. I really thought we were gonna win that game, but unfortunately, New York was not gonna allow us to walk off another game against them, and this losing skid nearly has us back in last place. Not only could we be the worst team in the division, but also the worst in all of baseball, and that's definitely a bit frustrating because we've already improved our roster so much. I guess this extra innings game will decide the worst team in baseball, as we're going to the 11th, and at least Fagan could advance the runner. Now with a man on third, we just need to drop in a single, and David Fletcher is thankfully gonna do exactly that. And now here's Rafael Matos, who's apparently a triple shy of the cycle. It feels like he has a ridiculous performance every time I enter a game, so of course I really want to get him that triple, but that's not gonna happen. Now I'm entirely focused on closing out Washington, as this is hit well to left field, and it looked like Alvarez had a play, but it goes right over his head for the tying RBI. This was actually Miguel Andujar, and I was fully prepared to say that he tracked it down, but it just went over his head. So now if we're not careful, they could win this game, and that was an absurdly lucky double play. This has been an even matchup between 2 bad teams, and I just have to say, with the glare, I can't see anything. Whoever's idea it was to have a bright green batter's eye needs to get fired, because our team is at a huge disadvantage, but hopefully with 2 outs, Von Grissom can deliver, and he does exactly that, going to opposite field for an RBI. Of course though, they tied the game immediately, and honestly, I only simmed that at bat so the CPU could change pitchers, but I guess they didn't want to, so now the game-winning run is on third base. This would be such an embarrassing way to end our season, but thankfully Stone Garrett pops up in the infield, so now I need a solution for this batter's eye, and I think I'm gonna solve the problem by changing my camera angle. Let me just say that fisheye looks extremely weird, but on the bright side, at least the glare's gone as Alvarez hits it right back to the pitcher. Now with 2 outs, we're unfortunately gonna pop up in foul territory, and honestly at this point, I'm gonna leave this up to simulation, and unfortunately, we are still the worst team in baseball. We finished season 2 at 59 and 103, but on the bright side, Rafael Matos did win Rookie of the Year as a 4th round pick, and of course, we're no longer restricted to only signing 2 free agents, so we might be able to supplement this core a little bit better this offseason. Outside of Rafael Matos, Dominic Mays probably had the 2nd best season, while Danny Jansen also hit 32 bombs, so we definitely had a few solid contributors this season, but I'm excited to see more of guys like Von Grissom, while also hopefully seeing jumps from a guy like Brent Fagan. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but the correct version seems to be a slur that could get me canceled, so I'd rather not take my chances. Looking at our pitching, it was a pretty good season from Corbin Burns, and even though Chris Bubic and Ken Waldachuk both struggled in the stat department, their attributes are still improving. Honestly, the same goes for Dylan Dodd and Thad Ward, so we could have a pretty decent rotation next season. Then in the bullpen, we might have gone through a million guys, but honestly, it was worth it to find at least a few decent contributors. This is definitely not the best class of free agents to address the many needs that we have, but we're still gonna bring in 5 players, with our top target being Nestor Cortez, who's coming off of a great season. Also, we may have a lot of outfielders, but I cannot pass up bringing in Austin Hayes on a pretty reasonable deal, along with Willie Castro, who could be a very valuable utility man. Then to round things out, we're targeting Hunter Harvey to be our best bullpen arm, along with a backup catcher. However, I'm also going to make our biggest trade in franchise history, moving newly drafted pitcher Kevin Munson, along with one of our top prospects, Joe Mack, for Bryce Miller. Last year's draft lottery bumped us down to number 2, but thankfully this season we're going to keep number 1. So even though we had the worst record in baseball, I think our team is quickly improving, and it could get even better with this number 1 overall pick. However, at the start of February, I'm going through free agency one more time, and there's one player that really catches my attention, and that is Vlad Guerrero Jr. His market definitely did not heat up the way it was expected to, but he would be the perfect player for us to complete our rebuild, so I'm going to offer him a 3-year deal to get him back on the market at age 30. party. To my complete surprise though, he actually accepted this offer, so we officially have the MLB cover athlete on our side. However, this excitement could all be for nothing if we get another big handicap, and you've gotta be kidding me. I just set our opening day roster, but now I have to trade one of our 5 best players, and it's gonna be a much bigger challenge than last season, because of course our roster is much better than it was a year ago, but I think our decision has to be between Danny Jansen and Nestor Cortez. Jansen had a bit of a down year last season, but still hit 32 bombs for us, so I feel like the player I need to get rid of is Cortez. Of course we cannot trade him right now because we just signed him, so instead I'm gonna pass him through waivers. I definitely feel much worse after losing our number 2 starter, but interesting enough, former starter Trevor Rogers still has 79 stamina, so just to see what he can do, I'm gonna add him to the rotation. Getting these same handicap 2 seasons in a row is certainly a rough blow, but here's Vlad Jr., who I honestly did not expect to get when I offered him that contract, but maybe he helps us make the playoffs. He's definitely not going to be able to get that job done on his own, as we really need our star players like Corbin Burns and Danny Jansen to step up, and that was a missile. There is also a lot of urgency for our second-year players to take big jumps, and one of those guys is Bernardo Alvarez, who may not have hit for a lot of power last season, but he did flash some pretty reliable on-base stuff. He's in position to be the first run of this game as Austin Hayes scores him from third base, so just like last season, we have an early lead on opening day, but if you remember last season, you know that might not last long, especially because the bases are loaded for Bryce Harper, who thankfully waves at strike 3. We are not safe yet, but another strikeout definitely helps, so Burns is rallying back after a tough start to the inning, but Stott is going to rain on his parade, sneaking this up the middle for the tying and the go-ahead run. This just means we have to rally from behind, which we struggled to do all season last year, but Willie Castro delivers, so we're once again tied with a very good playoff team, which is obviously encouraging for a team that just had the worst record in baseball. This one is definitely becoming a pitcher's duel, at least until Corbin Burns gave up the go-ahead run. Despite our improvements, this feels so similar to last year's opening day, but at least Mays is going yard, watching this one go the other way and drifting outside. We really needed that one, and now a Juan Soto grand slam pretty much sums up our day, as this game quickly turned into a bloodbath. Honestly, with the way we're playing in Season 3, I'm beginning to doubt that we can win a World Series by Season 5, so we desperately need to strike gold in this next draft as we have the number 1 pick, and I think I found the player I'm gonna select. Emery Rhodes is looking like the dream shortstop prospect, so I'm scouting him immediately, and this could not work out any more perfect because shortstop is our biggest position of need. Our first division series of the year is against the Mets, and of course, we're in extra innings, but we left 2 guys on board, so we're in danger of being walked off, but I'm still very hopeful because there's 2 outs for one of our best relievers, Will Vest, but maybe I spoke too soon because this blooper's gonna drop in right center field, and that is how the cookie crumbles. These 2 teams cannot avoid dramatic finishes, and to my surprise, the Mets are winning our division. Losing our number 2 starter has definitely hurt us, but our offense has also been terrible, as just like last season, we fail to come up in every big situation. We desperately need one of these extra inning games to go our way, as that is a great diving play from Ellie De La Cruz, which ultimately prevented us from scoring the game-winning run, but Austin Hayes hit this more than deep enough to center field to finally give us a walk-off win, even if it wasn't very exciting. I was hopeful this could give us more momentum moving forward, but we're still only winning about half of our games, and so far it is very clear to me that our pitching is still a major problem. The Trevor Rogers experiment is also not working out, but on the bright side, at least the Vlad Jr. signing has given our offense a bit of stability, and we've almost fully scouted Emery Rhodes, who's looking like an absolute stud. My goal is to make the playoffs, but so far this season, there have been significantly more negatives than positives, but it really feels like we're starting to heat up because if we can beat the Cardinals in this extra inning game, we will win a 4-game series. A very impressive 2-out rally has put us up by 2 runs, but our closer is really making me nervous, as he's allowed every batter to make very good contact, including this one with 2 outs, as this is going all the way back into center field, but it's not gonna leave the yard. We just won 3 out of 4 to the Cardinals, so we are slowly creeping ahead in our division. However, not long after, we lost 3 out of 4 to the Dodgers, so this is not a good time to be entering the most difficult stretch of our season, but we can prove ourselves against Atlanta, who just scored the go-ahead run in extras. This is the type of game we need to win to get over the hump, so this loss makes it even clearer we have a long way to go. The Braves would go on to sweep us, which put us back in last place in the division, so once again, we're relying on a series against the Mets to turn our season around, and here's a 7th inning home run from Vaughn Grissom. Last year's trade deadline acquisition is enjoying a breakout season, and at least early on, him and Vlad Jr. have carried our offense, but we definitely need players like Austin Hayes to turn it around, and right on cue, he's going deep to left field. That was great timing, as 2 home runs helped us beat the Mets, and we would also go on to sweep them, which helped us surge surged to a 29-31 record. As I mentioned, Vaughn Grissom and Vlad Jr. are single-handedly saving our offense because guys like Willie Castro, Austin Hayes, and Danny Jansen are struggling, but it also really helps that Corbin Burns and Bryce Miller are both having pretty good years. It might be a little bit early in the season, but the Pirates are looking to sell, so I'm going to trade for two players named Jared. The first being Jared Triolo, who's having a very good year and could play outfield for us, while we're also going to pick up Jared Jones, who's on a cold streak, but I think he still has a lot of upside. In return, we're sending them Ken Waldachuk, along with an outfielder and a catcher who are some of our best prospects. That was a very aggressive move, but I think it's going to be worth it, especially because we're 5 games above 500, and now we have so many players who are on hot streaks. Beating up on the Washington Nationals would be a great way to see our progress, as Vlad Jr. just batted in the first run of the game, and that was followed up by a Vlad Jr. home run, so we're leading 3-0 and almost added another run. This has been a dominant performance from Chris Bubic, and it would be great to help him out by cushioning our lead, but unfortunately, we just left the bases loaded. We actually stranded a ton of runners on base in that game, but I still can't complain about a division win, especially because we swept them, which put us 2.5 games back in the East. It is time for the MLB draft, and it's definitely a little more fun when we already know who we're taking with the #1 pick, because Emery Rhodes has given me zero reason not to take him. He looks insane, and I just hope he's not a bust. At this point in the rebuild, the rest of our draft after Rhodes really doesn't matter as much, because if Rhodes is as good as the game's telling us, he could be the final piece to this rebuild. Ever since we acquired Jared Triolo, our offense has completely done a 180, and they're actually playing really good. And it also seems that Jared Jones has really solidified our rotation, but if we're going to take that next step, our bullpen needs to be a lot more consistent. Obviously, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is an all-star, but I'm definitely surprised that there's no Vaughn Grissom, along with anybody else from our team. I really can't complain though, as we're 54-42 at the break, and because we're having so much success, I'm going to try to make a move to solidify our biggest weakness, as the Guardians are looking to move reliever Trevor Stefan, and I'm going to jump all over that. However, if we want to win our division, we have to start beating playoff teams, starting with the Orioles, as Vlad Jr. goes yard, so that's going to make this a 1-run game, and Jansen could be the tying run, but unfortunately he strikes out, and it's the same story. Honestly, I'm very close to trading Danny because he has not been good at all this season, but there are still 2 months left in the season, so I'm holding out hope he can turn it around, as we're starting August with a game against the Angels. We are still neck and neck with Atlanta for the division lead, and here's our backup catcher Francisco Mejia showing why maybe he should be the starter. That was an absolute missile into left field, so we've taken an early lead that the Angels are gonna chip into, and in the 7th inning, the score remains 3-2. It is very important that we score some insurance runs, especially because of how inconsistent our bullpen's been, and there's a man in scoring position to start the 8th, and Alvarez is going to drive him in on this RBI single. I definitely feel better about having a 2-run lead, but with only 1 out, we can do more damage, as the bases are loaded and Matos draws an RBI walk. There's our 2nd run of the inning, and now Triolo's gonna ground in another one, which brings up Mejia, who already has a home run today, and he adds on a sacrifice fly. Now there's 2 outs for rookie third baseman Fernando Gallegos, who launches a home run into left field, which completed a 7-run inning. That victory gave us the division lead, but that's not even the most exciting thing right now, as we can finally view our draft picks and see just how good Emery Rhodes was. I have not been this nervous about a prospect in a while, but I'm entering the screen, and there we go, a 91 overall. I have never seen that before in my entire life. This is a new type of generational talent that's been added to the game, and honestly, I was expecting him to be maybe 81 overall at best. I cannot believe we just got an elite shortstop with power, call him the next Gunnar Henderson, and aside from getting Rhodes, it looked like the CPU actually followed my draft queue pretty well and got some pretty talented players. I really wish we could use him this season because him and Vlad Jr. would be an amazing team, but we're still doing pretty good without him, as we're in a close game against the Padres, and Alvarez is gonna drive in the go-ahead run. The biggest development for this team over the season has definitely been their ability to win closer games, as here's another run, and if we can stay this clutch, I think we actually have a chance in the playoffs. That victory started a big win streak, so to begin September, we are 6 games up in our division. I'm almost waiting for this team to slip, but it simply has not happened yet, and the more games we win, the better chance we have of winning the division over Atlanta, as here's a Guerrero double for another RBI. It certainly also helps that Trevor Rogers is pitching a shutout in this game, as here's a deep drive to left field, and what a catch. That definitely just prevented another run, but Trevor's holding it down, as his performance today has definitely helped us out because we've only scored 2 runs, but we're gonna add 2 more here. Those were the first runs we've scored since the 3rd inning, and here's another one from Matos. So just like I said earlier, our offense is finally showing up in these late game situations, and Trevor Rogers finished a complete game shutout. However, here's the rematch we've been waiting for against Atlanta, as we're tied in the 9th, and more than likely we're going to extra innings, but maybe not so easily, because 2 walks got 2 guys aboard for Triolo, who's able to launch the game-winning RBI into right center field. For once in our life, we avoided extra innings, and even though we have 2 series against Atlanta before the end of the year, we have an 11.5 game division lead. After the way our season started, I did not expect to be on pace to win 100 games, but it definitely makes sense considering our pitching rotation has really turned around, and suddenly our entire bullpen is also looking a lot better. Another late game rally against the Braves could be the icing on the cake, and Willie Castro's gonna drive in the go-ahead run in the 8th, so it may be possible we finally have their number, and now Dominic Mays is getting in on the action, driving this deep into center field where it's gonna get down to score another run. The Party Animals are red hot right before the playoffs, and would finish the year at 103-59, which ended up being the second best record in all of baseball, just behind the Dodgers. It really makes sense the Dodgers were so good because Ohtani won his 2nd straight MVP while Betts was in 3rd place, but along with winning MVP, this was Shohei's 3rd Cy Young in a row. However, as you can see, we did have a Cy Young finalist in Dylan Dodd, which is actually really funny because he was only a long reliever for us, but after him, the only award finalist we had was Colin Holderman, who did win reliever of the year. Our rotation had the 2nd best ERA in all of baseball, but of course, our offense was also pretty good, ranking in 8th for hits, and we were also in 13th for total runs. The Cardinals are our first playoff opponent, and they may be a challenge after signing Zach Gallen away from free agency to team up with a very balanced offense. In game number 1, the Cardinals offense struck first against Burns, who would give up 5 runs in his first 2 innings, and there was no way we were coming back from that. Game number 2 has certainly started off better, as Vlad Jr. is going the other way to make it 3-0, so now our offense cannot be stopped, which allowed us to clap right back. This is where I really hope our rotation shines, and we're in a good spot after a 6th inning home run, so it's 5-2, and we're looking for more runs with 2 guys on base, but what a catch from Dylan Carlson. That was an amazing play, but unfortunately for the Cardinals, it did not matter for long, as a slow dribbler up the middle made this a 3-run game, followed by another single from Dominic Mays to officially ice game 3. We certainly did not get off to a good start in this series, but now the Cardinals are facing elimination, and we just tied this game at 4 apiece, and now there's runners at the corners with 2 outs, and Brent Fagan comes up big with an RBI single. Savannah keeps scoring runs at just the right time, but they could really use another run in the 9th. The Cardinals are breathing down their neck as it's a 1-run game, and we have to remember that because they're the home team, they have a chance to walk it off against us, but with 2 outs, we have Castro on 3rd base, so I'm asking Brent Fagan to deliver, but that fastball is deadly. That is unfortunate, but I'm more confident knowing this game's in the hands of reliever of the year Colin Holderman, and so far, he's really holding it down, as the Cardinals are down to their last out, but Lars Nootbaar is going to double the other way. That puts the tying run on 2nd, so I am definitely holding my breath here, but there's a grounder to short, and the flip over to 1st base is in time to advance the Party Animals to the NLCS. It definitely wasn't pretty, but what a rally from the Bananas after getting blown out in game 1, but they're gonna need their best performance against the Dodgers. The Dodgers are always very good for a long time in MLB The Show, but I have never seen this dominant of a run from Ohtani, who's won the Cy Young and the MVP in back-to-back years. There is very room for error against a super team, but there's a great start, as Corbin Burns has really bounced back from his terrible game 1 against the Cardinals, so we have a 2-0 lead in the 5th inning, but with 2 guys on, Danny Jansen's unable to score more. The Dodgers quickly made it a 1-run game, so we desperately need an answer in the 7th inning, and there it is, it's Brent Fagan again. Now we can at least relax a little bit more, but while we're at it, why not get some redemption for Danny Jansen, who launches a double into the gap to score 2 more runs. The Party Animals have shocked baseball's best team, and they would carry this momentum into game 2, scoring 5 runs in the first 2 innings, so we are definitely fired up and well on our way to starting this series 2-0, and even though Vlad Jr. missed a chance to score another run and the Dodgers tried to come back, we were just able to hold them off. Then in game 3, we also struck first, and our rotation has been fabulous throughout the playoffs, which has definitely been the key in this game because our offense only has 3 hits. Once again, the Party Animals find a way to survive, and they're 1 game away from the World Series, but the Dodgers are unleashing Shohei Ohtani. This is where we need our offense to come up big if we want to earn the sweep, especially because we're already down 1-0, and Vlad Jr. nearly tied the game, but thankfully Matos gets it done instead. So we're actually doing damage against Ohtani, but of course there's a grand slam. It's gonna take a lot for us to get back in this one, but there's a huge answer. So we're only down 1 run, and the good news is that Ohtani is now out of the game, which could be our best chance to pull off the comeback, but another run put us in the coffin. We couldn't pull off the sweep, but honestly that that is not a huge deal to me, because in Game 5, Corbin Burnes is on the mound, but maybe I spoke too soon because he did just give up a 2-run bomb, and even though Vlad Jr. just got on base, Danny Jansen was way too underneath this one. We cannot afford to let the Dodgers come back in this series, so thankfully Willie Castro goes yard to right field, but here come the Dodgers tying it right back up, so this one's officially become an absolute sweat fest. Now we need a walk-off win to send us to the World Series, but that's much easier said than done as there are 2 outs. However, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is the next man up. Our best player can send us to the World Series, and it definitely should have been on that pitch, but he's gonna come right back with a fastball down the middle that Guerrero is not gonna let pass him by, as in an absolute stunner, the Savannah Party Animals are the National League champions. What a Cinderella run for a team in its 3rd year of existence, and how fitting is it that we're taking on the Tigers. We made several trades with this team during our rebuild, and clearly it didn't hurt either side, as they were able to get here as a wild card team. After dismantling the Dodgers, the World Series should be a walk in the park, yet we're losing early on in Game 1, and our lack of offense definitely concerns me, because this is the worst time to get into a slump. We desperately need Game 2 to be better, but we're already trailing by a run, and then Torkelson went yard, so moving to the 7th inning, the Tigers have a 2-run lead, and if we lose, this will be the first time we've trailed by 2 games in a playoff series, but hold your horses, here's Jared Triolo. That was so unbelievably clutch, but now we have a walk-off chance against Tyler Holton, and if you remember, he used to play for our team, but the wheel of rebuilds gave him away. Because of that, it would be extremely ironic if we walked it off against him in the World Series, but instead, he retires the side, and now the bases are loaded against the Party Animals, and that is a perfect suicide squeeze. Now the pressure's on against the heart of Savannah's order, and that is not a good start. So Danny Jansen's their last chance, and while he makes good contact, it's gonna be caught, so Detroit goes up 2-0. Things are bleak, but Savannah's definitely not out of gas, because their offense finally broke through in Game 3, and Vlad Jr. started Game 4 by going yard, while Corbin Burnes was back on the mound, and he pitched a gem to help us tie the series. This makes Game 5 very important, but we're trailing by 2, and so far, the Tigers ace Tariq Skubal has been a huge issue. We have not been able to barrel anything against him, which definitely sucks, because this is a very important game to win, as we would be facing elimination going into game number 6. We did score an RBI double, but unfortunately, it was too little too late, so this is suddenly a very bad situation. It is officially time for us to lock in and pull off a rally, and so far, things are looking very good, as we're already leading by 3 runs, and here's that power from Vlad Jr. going the other way, deep into right field, and over the fence for a 3-run shot. No one can rally quite like the Party Animals, especially because Vlad went deep 3 times today. This sets up a huge winner-takes-all Game 7 of the World Series, and Vlad Jr. is going to drive in the first run of the game. But of course, as we've seen, the Tigers will not go away, as they tied it and then put up 5 runs in the 4th. That was the worst time for Jared Jones to explode and give up a bunch of runs, because now our World Series hopes depend on these last 2 innings. I never expected us to be here in Season 3, but now that we are, I want to win. But at the rate things are going, we're going to fall to the Tigers after dismantling Los Angeles, as Vlad Jr. could be our final out, and of course it's Javier Baez who makes the play of his life to win the Detroit Tigers a World Series. What kind of crazy universe is this? That was probably the most disappointing way this season could have ended, but all I can say is the redemption tour is going to be very sweet, because we're bringing in our secret weapon, shortstop Emery Rhodes. Entering Season 4, I have to get aggressive, so I'm making a big move for Tristan McKenzie, and I'm also going to make a big trade with the rebuilding Padres to bring in Luis Campusano. That's going to make Danny Jansen expendable, who is still a great catcher, and after getting beat by us in the NLCS, I think the Dodgers could really use him. Along with him, the Dodgers are getting a solid pitching prospect for Gavin Stone, and finally, since we have the money, I'm extending an offer to Jose Alvarado. This is a very aggressive push to get better, but we were 1 game away from winning it all, so why not swing for the fences? I'm definitely feeling very confident with this team, especially now that the wheel is showing us mercy. As a result of our offense, we are now the 2nd ranked team in baseball, so unlike in previous seasons, I have no doubt we're making the playoffs, as here's a deep bomb from Vlad Jr. to break a 2-2 tie against Atlanta. I played that game just to test how good our team is, and as you can see, our season is off to a very hot start, which continued up to the All-Star break, where we have 73 wins. Looking at our stats though, this is no surprise, because Vlad Jr. is having one of the most ridiculous seasons I've ever seen, with 41 home runs and 100 RBIs at the break. There's still half of a season to go, but he's on pace to shatter pretty much every single record. But it's also worth noting this has been a breakout year for Willie Castro and Rafael Matos, and rookie shortstop Emery Rhodes is everything we thought he was gonna be. Now, just because I can, I'm making a huge trade for Nick Lodolo, and I'm also making one what is hopefully the final trade of the rebuild for a backup catcher in Harry Ford. After those trades, I really don't think there's much more we can do to improve this team, as we put together the best season in the history of baseball with 122 wins. Vlad Jr. did slow down a little bit towards the end of the season, but he still won the MVP by a large margin with 64 home runs and 154 RBIs. Also, to nobody's surprise, Emery Rhodes won Rookie of the Year, and of course, Vlad Jr. took home the Hank Aaron Award. Overall, I think this is one of the best teams I've ever built, as our entire offense was on point the entire season. And at least to me, the craziest thing about our offense is guys like Rafael Matos, Brent Fagan, and Bernardo Alvarez aren't super high overalls, but they always seem to step up and play above their ratings. Not to mention, we probably had the best pitching rotation in the history of baseball, and I'm definitely glad we drafted well enough to be able to make this trade for Nick Lodolo. I genuinely fear for any team that has to take us on in the playoffs, and our first challengers are the Philadelphia Phillies. I do not see this working out well for Philadelphia, especially after Vlad Jr. just hit a 3-run home run, and we easily took game number 1. Game 2 was the same story, so we have the chance to earn a sweep, but Philadelphia's making this a close game, at least until Rafael Matos sends one over the fence. I cannot believe he was a 4th-round pick in our first draft, because he's truly emerged as one of the best players on a loaded team, along with guys like Brent Fagan and Bernardo Alvarez, who always seem to make plays when we need them to. Another run can bury the Phillies, and of course MVP winner Vlad Guerrero Jr. is gonna get it done, launching this deep to center field and over the fence, which helps us move on to the NLCS. I was expecting a series against the Dodgers or the Braves, but to my surprise, the Dodgers didn't even make the playoffs, so the Chicago Cubs are our next opponent. To put it nicely, this is not a very good team, as we shut them out in game 1, but our offense has stalled in game 2 as it's tied at 1 apiece. However, there's runners at the corners in the 8th, and here's a go-ahead sac fly. All-star closer Jose Alvarado is in to close them out, and that save puts us up 2-0. It's very clear that our rotation is too good for Chicago, as a gem from Nick Lodolo secured another win, so now Savannah is 1 win away from getting back to the World Series, as the elimination game is tied at 6 apiece. Chicago has been fighting for their life, and it might earn us our first playoff loss, as we are still deadlocked in the 9th and could be headed towards extras. Chicago's down to their last strike of regulation, and there's the punch out, so this crazy game continues where Alvarez is trying to end it, but it's run down. It is now the 13th inning, and it's very clear neither of these teams wants to win, because that single from Fagan is the biggest thing that's happened in 3 innings, but now he gets himself thrown out. However, the Cubs offense has also disappeared, so it feels like we have unlimited chances to win this game, as we have another man aboard with 2 outs, and Jimenez gets him to third base. This is the closest we've gotten to scoring, but unfortunately Campusano flies out, so we're going to the 15th inning, where Alvarez gives us a ride into left center, but unfortunately it's not gonna have the distance. At this point, I kinda just want Chicago to win, but once again, our bullpen is proving to be too good, so we're going to the Sweet 16, but no, Drake, it's not the type you want it to be. We once again have 2 guys on base, but of course Rhodes grounds into a double play, so there's 2 outs for Eloy Jimenez and a man at third as he finally drives in a run. That is the first of extra innings. That definitely was not super flashy, but at least it ends one of the longest, most frustrating games I've ever played. The Party Animals are going to the World Series for the 2nd straight year, and their opponents are the Minnesota Twins. I don't want to say anything because they're much better than the Tigers, who beat us in 7 games last season, but this should be a very interesting series, which will begin with Tristan McKenzie on the mound as we just hit 2 home runs, and we still have not lost a playoff game. This would be a very satisfying way to end the video after choking in the World Series last season, as here's 2 runs in game 2, which ended up being another easy win. This team is clearly ready to start their off season, because we all knew this team was going to be good, but I never anticipated an undefeated playoff run, as Minnesota's facing elimination, but it's only a 1-0 game, so Savannah's relying on their bullpen more than ever, but there's already 2 guys on base. We're going to try to get them to ground into a double play, but unfortunately Lewis bats in the tying run, so now we're in a very bad situation with runners at the corners. Here's a chopper to second base, but I think Tucker's going to be able to beat it out as Minnesota takes the lead. The Party Animals offense has not been great today, but now's the time to deliver, especially against flamethrower Johan Duran, as that fastball hit 103 and he gets Guerrero with the curveball. It definitely doesn't help. Our best hitters are righties, but this makes it a little easier, as Grisham's on third base, but that's just way too fast. Our best chance is to pinch hit a lefty, but even that's not gonna work, as Minnesota handed us our first playoff loss. That is a very tough loss, but we rebounded very fast in game 5. However, Minnesota was not gonna go away without a fight, scoring 5 runs, and they even came back to take the lead, so we have a lot of work to do. We missed way too many of these opportunities to score in our last game, which resulted in a loss, but have no fear, Alvarez is here, batting in the tying run. And now Vlad Jr. can give us the lead right back, but he absolutely chokes. Then after that, Minnesota came back with a 2-run bomb, so it seems like all hope is lost, but here's Luis Campusano. Once again though, we have runners on first and second with a chance to take the lead, but this time could be different as Alvarez gives it a ride straight into the glove of Byron Buxton. If we lose this game, it's because we left too many guys on, and now in the 9th inning, it's in our best interest to wrap this up, or we're gonna have to face off against Johan Duran again. There is a man on first, and this is blasted straight into the glove of Royce Lewis. Are you kidding me? That's gonna give Minnesota the chance to win this game, but thankfully for us, their offense is also slowed down, and now we're in extra innings. Right now, I am begging for the game of baseball to show us some mercy, because I would not be surprised if another 16-inning game killed me right on the spot, as we have a man on first in the 11th, but of course, there's a ground out. I am begging for our bullpen to hold on just a bit longer, but I guess the downside of that is the inning's gonna continue as Matos doubles into the gap with 2 outs, so we have a runner in scoring position for the first time in a while, but there's a pop-up. We are so close to getting to this 16th inning, just like that very painful game against the Pirates, so I'm definitely glad we have a man on first early on, and a nearly identical play is gonna get 2 aboard. However, the Twins have finally decided to unleash Duran, but right as they do, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is gonna be the hero. We finally scored, so here's Jose Alvarado, who definitely has a very tough job against the top of this lineup, but there's another out, so we need just one more to win the World Series, and there it is. As I took over the Savannah Party Animals for 4 seasons, and after starting with a terrible roster, we rebuilt this team into a dynasty. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you made it all the way to the end, please drop a like and subscribe for more MLB content, and also click right here to see more of my videos.